What is climate change? According to NASA, climate is how weather for a location acts, on average, over a long period of time, while weather is the state of the atmosphere during the relatively short period of time. Although the Earth is warming, winter weather patterns are changing and becoming more varied and less predictable. As a result of climate change, some winters are colder and some are not even harsh at all. Global climate change has already had directly observable effects on the environment. Glaciers have receded when they are not supposed to, along with ice on rivers and lakes breaking up earlier than expected. As a result, plant and animal ranges have shifted, and certain ecosystems have been disrupted in varying degrees. In some places, the unnatural warming of the earth has caused heat waves to come and stay for extended periods of time, causing some species to die out or move elsewhere. How can humans cause climate change? Under normal conditions, there is a nearly perfect balance between input and output of solar radiation, keeping Earth's weather patterns and overall surface temperature consistent over long periods of time. When sunlight hits the Earth's surface, it is partially absorbed and the rest is reflected. A few other exchanges of heat occur and everything is relatively balanced under normal conditions. If one part of this system is altered in a significant way, it can be thrown off balance in an unnatural and severe degree. As humanity progressed, we entered the Industrial Revolution. The human population expanded by roughly 12 times from 1700 to 2018, with about half of that growth occurring in the last half century. With the changes in technology and growth in population, we have artificially added an unimaginable volume of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. This gas insulates certain wavelengths of reflected solar radiation and prevents some of it from being expelled, which then causes too much heat to be trapped. This is how we have thrown our planet's natural climate out of balance. much has the climate changed and what can a future Earth look like? To figure out how much the climate has changed, climatologists use a variety of different techniques to measure the temperature of past years before weather recordings started indirectly, which are calibrated by observing the same things created during years when data has been recorded. For example, the thickness of tree rings is directly proportional to the mean yearly temperature. Scientists can use known temperatures to figure out what thickness represents which temperature, and then use rings created prior to recorded weather data to estimate temperatures from the distant past. Using this and many other methods, we can observe that there has been a significant spike in temperature which corresponds with a man-made spike in atmospheric carbon dioxide. To determine what the climate might look like in the next century, the United States Geological Survey has partnered with several universities and research organizations around the world to create the PRISM project, not to be confused with the NSA's Unethical Surveillance Program. The PRISM project is gathering data on the climate of Pliocene, the last geologic age to have temperatures as warm as they are projected to be at the end of the 21st century, in an effort to create better climate models and help guide policy decisions regarding the environment. Pliocene, roughly 5 million years ago, can be used to give us a rough idea of what the world will look like if climate change is not halted or reversed. This map was created using data on rock formations dating to the Pliocene. History of federal policy and international efforts. The Kyoto Protocol is the first international agreement that brought countries together in order to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Started in 1992 and finalized in 1997, was brought into effect in 2005 and became an international law. Nearly all nations signed it and pledged to cut yearly emissions of carbon to around 5.2% by 2012. Due to a large increase in gas emissions, it was getting harder for some countries to achieve the goals. However, some, like the European Union, were able to meet or exceed their goals. But due to the two largest emitters, the US and China, all reductions that was made were erased. The Paris Accord was made on December 12, 2015. It is an agreement that its goal is to adopt green energy sources. 196 different parties came together with plans to cut down carbon emissions. It acknowledges the fact that it is an urgent threat that is potentially irreversible. Its central goal is to limit the rise of temperature to 3.8 degrees Fahrenheit. Each of the countries that are a part of the pact submit a plan that will help tackle gas emissions. The countries agree to meet often to discuss their progress. There are no penalties for not achieving the goals. The plan was that through peer pressure, the goals would be met. CFC, or chlorofluorocarbon, are manufactured chemical compounds that contain chlorine, fluorine, and carbon due to the damage that they cause to the ozone layer. There has been a ban from production in the U.S. since 1996. When they are emitted, they go up to the stratosphere and break apart, releasing the chlorine atom, which destroys the ozone layer. While in the stratosphere, they can hang around for more than 100 years. They are a greenhouse gas, meaning they are able to absorb heat from the Earth's atmosphere and bounce it back to the Earth's surface. This ends up contributing to global warming. Since the ban, the ozone layer has begun to regenerate over the South Pole. This is a prime example of how acting early and taking a hardline stance against a pollutant can produce good results. A small bit of hope in an otherwise bleak situation. Ways to combat climate change. There are many different small solutions that can help aid in reduction of greenhouse gas emissions to go along with some of the bigger solutions. First, expanding the use of renewable energy would have a huge impact on the climate change. Firstly, expanding the use of renewable energy on climate change. By becoming less dependent on fossil fuels such as coal, we can transform our energy system into a cleaner one. We can place limits on the amount of carbon that polluters such as power plants can emit into the atmosphere. Finally, by investing in energy efficient technologies and industries, we can help build a cleaner economy. Carbon scrubbing involves a device that can absorb carbon dioxide. There are power plants that use this technology to capture CO2 that directly enter the air from the smokestack. But it is said to be a lot more expensive to remove from the atmosphere as opposed to the areas with high concentrations of it. Researchers believe it would only be a feasible solution if carbon-free energy was required, such as solar or wind, because of large amounts of energy carbon scrubbing required. From 2000 through 2016, the consumption of renewable energy more than doubled and is predicted by the U.S. Energy Information Administration to continue to increase for many more years. These renewable sources of energy, such as solar, wind, hydropower, and geothermal, don't emit the greenhouse gases, such as CO2, like the widely used fossil fuels do. This increase in the consumption of renewable energy sources make it one of the most important solutions to reducing emissions of greenhouse gases. Cost of implementation versus losses due to climate-related disasters. To implement the removal of carbon dioxide from the air by the solution of carbon scrubbing, it would likely cost $1,000 per ton of CO2, which is a way higher cost compared to current power plant scrubbers that cost only $50 to $100 per ton. As for the solution of renewable energy at capital costs, which is the expenses of building and installing the solar and wind farms, are the majority of the expense. The average cost in 2017 for the installation of solar systems ranged from about $2,000 per kilowatt for the large-scale system and about $3,700 for the residential systems. Wind ranges from $1,200 to $1,700 per kilowatt. In 2017, the cost of generating for solar was estimated around 43 to 53 per megawatt hour, and for wind about 30 to 60 per megawatt hour. These keep decreasing as time goes on. This image shows 16 weather and climate disasters that happened in 2017 alone. Out of all climate and weather disasters, tropical cyclones are the most costly disasters, with an estimated of $22.4 billion per event. Other more costly disasters include droughts with an average cost of $9.5 billion per event, floods with an average of $4.3 billion per event, wildfires with an average of $3.6 billion per event, with many more disasters that have an average cost of over $1 billion. Losses and gains of climate change depend on the area. Climate change is more likely to impact areas such as the South and the Midwest than it is to impact the northern areas of the country. There are many losses due to climate change. One of the many losses is loss of land area, vulnerable species of plants and animals in forest areas. The World Health Organization has also said that climate change has even had an impact upon health and various populations around the world. This is because of the changing weather patterns that are accompanied by frequent pathogens and diseases. There are, of course, the areas where there are less cold-related deaths and the gain of lower heating costs due to the warmer weather. Also, these areas in the north are actually benefited from altered weather in terms of increased agricultural production. For many decisions, policymakers now use the cost-benefit analysis as a way to compare the benefits against the cost and making sure the decision has a net benefit of their constituents. The effects of global warming are beginning to have a negative impact upon business. When that impact grows larger than the cost to implement solutions for climate change, it is more likely that the government and the private sector will contribute more towards fighting climate change. Current federal policy and suggested changes. Trump signed executive orders on March 29, 2017, stating that he wanted to eliminate climate change at federal outreach level. He thinks that the mining industry is embracing and that jobs will return. His view on climate is that his order will serve the environment and increase energy dependence at the same time. At federal level, the government needs to make it better by having a better economy nationwide. Like in China and India, do less to protect the environment. Another way that the government could help with global climate change at a federal level would be to find ways to make fossil fuels slow down along with making the air and water healthier.